Great. I see everyone coming in. It looks like we have about 40 people back in this group. It looks like we might be waiting for a few from waste and consumption, so we'll do that for just a moment. I hope everyone had some good conversations. I know I was sad to leave our group and wanted to carry on for, the rest of the day, but we have lots of things we need to do. So 2 hours is a lot of time, so I really appreciate everyone taking that time out. So again, we'll just wait one more minute as we actually, I think we should probably start with our wrap up. So I see Lindsay down there nodding her head. So I think we'll do the reverse order this time. So we'll start with Lindsay in sequestration and resiliency to share. And we're going to try to keep it really quick to just 1 or maybe 2 minutes.
Okay, here I go. Let's see, so the 2 or 3 most important issues for our topic area to Issaquah. Forests are huge. We want our forests to bounce back year after year. We're looking at creating defensible spaces that have ecology to back it up. So meaning we want to plant we want to plant trees, of course, but we want to plant the right trees in the right places and be informed on that in our actions, long-term management to help us create more resilient and sustainable forests is really important. A second one is our aquatic resources, of course, in Issaquah are huge. Much has been lost over the past several decades, and we need to continue to work to restore all of that. Our resilient habitats and our climate action plans need to pay attention to water habitats, importantly. So, and then we also talked a little bit about the fact that funding is a major concern for all of these issues, and we rely so much on taxes. We have many renters in Issaquah, so we had kind of more of a question: how are we going to fund all these ideas and priorities once we establish them and start to direct them in the direction that we want them to go? In terms of the second question, what things could be done to overcome potential barriers and make progress? We thought a really fantastic idea was the city could quantify the carbon in our forests. When the city sees the contribution made by the forests, it might be more inclined to put more money into planting trees and preserving those habitats. Healthy forests have more biomass and more carbon production. So helping the city see that value may help drive funding towards these efforts. And Issaquah could be a real leader in this idea if it took into account, its trees as assets instead of just one of our costs to maintain our forests. Also, harvesting forests can minimize impacts to the soils and minimize impact to wildlife ecology. I know harvesting forests is not always a popular idea, but it does have some upsides and maybe the best way to recoup some of the cost of maintaining those forests to make sure that they are resilient. So that was something we discussed. Retrofitting buildings for stormwater would be a great idea, although costly, but might be worth considering, especially if we're an area with light rail coming in the future. So that was a big idea. Of course, educating individual homeowners as well on the value of planting a tree. So having some kind of education campaign just for homeowners in Issaquah would be big. We acknowledge that cities have bureaucracy and other limitations, and that can be challenging. But that Issaquah could really benefit from utilizing volunteers better and citizens, and getting them getting past some of the barriers like insurance barriers and things like that that have held us back from doing that. We had some great insight from David on that, David Cap. Number 3, so if we came back in a year, what would we want to see? Measuring the sequestration of carbon, we think that's really big. That would help us see where we're going and see our assets a little bit better and more clearly in terms of how we're balancing everything. So finding ways to increase volunteer engagement again came up, stewardship and leadership of volunteers. So helping to build a constituency of folks that can both influence policy and also get people out and doing something positive to make a difference would be really big. And I think we need the infrastructure to help build that volunteer force. And funding, of course, back to funding again to support all of this work. is a huge piece of the pie that we wanted to acknowledge. And then importantly, mobilizing the next generation. So building a real movement from all of the passion and energy that we see coming from our younger people, and really making this something that takes off as, you know, a strong way that we have seen in recent months with other movements. We think
Yes.
that that's
All
a
right.
possibility, and how can we add to that? So,
Thank you
that's
very much. Sounds like a very robust conversation in that group. So great.
lots
All
of good
right,
ideas.
Trish. Trish, you're up for waste and consumption in 1 minute.
Okay.
Up now for 1 minute.
And again, there's even though we're now into topical, there is still quite a bit of overlap. So, okay. So what are the 2 or 3 most important? We basically focused on our quandary here with garbage recycling and composting. There was a suggestion to create code that requires all residents and businesses to do it. So actually, put it into the municipal code. And it was brought up by Lisa, who is in charge of all that good stuff at Costco, that San Francisco has very rigorous rules in that area, but it might be, we have to kind of go in baby steps. It might be too big of a leap for Issaquah right now to be that stringent, but at least go halfway. Let me see, city policy support and incentives for residents, businesses, and schools that recycle. It was brought up by Karen at Cedar Grove that when composting is free because it's embedded rates and it's basically underwritten by the trash pickup, it definitely increases the contamination. People just think that the compost bin might be another trash bin, and Cedar Grove has to spend a lot of time and energy and resources to pull it out. And she suggested that we even look at Kirkland. She said Kirkland has a great program where they monitor the bins at curbside for contamination. Let me see. And again, education. And try and teach, our generation as well as the younger kids to be less of a consumer society. Let me see. Did I get everything here? Okay. Let me
That
see.
sounds pretty good. We might move on to the next one just to make sure we have time for everyone. And again, we've recorded all of these sessions, so we can all go back and listen to each one. So thank you, Trish. Anne, we will go to you for transportation and land use. I think you're on mute. There we go.
Okay. Okay. First item is that Issaquah could be a leader in piloting programs for local transit. And someone brought up the idea that Snoqualmie has been doing this for quite a few years now, and are being very successful. They're actually adding. So Issaquah could be a leader and increase our local transportation, and smaller vehicles were brought up, and even go-kart kinds of things for families. And the other thing is just in design, that a lot of things can be done to improve the safety for walking and biking, and in the roads in the areas that we have now, and just through design and different programs, and that people need to be introduced to those and worked with so that they are not afraid to try them. So give them some opportunities for that. The other thing is that was brought up that I wanted to be sure and mention was the barriers were like, don't change my neighborhood, needs to be addressed by helping people understand the benefit to them, and telling them we just need to change it a little bit and it's going to be so much better for you. In our land use code, there's something called form-based code, which would help us to really look at things in a different way than we have in the past. So it's about change. Another barrier is getting access and affordability for the different transportation sessions. And the last thing is communications is a barrier. And that's something that volunteers, we could use social media, we can use the city, but how do we get the word out to people? So we need to probably have some sort of a group that works on that, both city and volunteers, to set something up.
Thank you, Anne. All right, Diane with Energy and Green Building.
All right, let's see if I can do this in a minute. Incentives are great. Builders need incentives because they don't change unless there's a reason to. And then there was quite a bit of discussion on what does being a leader mean, that this needs to be clarified, and we need a plan that's workable across the board. And PSC mentioned that they can have the best plan, for example, for wind and solar, energy, but how do you make it happen? People can show up to oppose even small projects. So how do we get people to show up to have these conversations? So getting community buy-in. And then there was talk about how to do that and getting people like us telling us when those meetings are, and we can show up and give a pros to doing that. And then there was a conversation in that regard about talking about creating coalitions, going in, if there's a change that you're wanting to make happen, go to where you're asking for the change. And this is related to getting permits. You go in first and create a coalition, educate the group about what that means, and then they have buy-in before they're, and then the conversation was asking them, well, what do you want to see? So that would make you, more likely to give this permit for this. So the big main point was coalitions. Barriers was about having more people working together like we're doing here. And maybe there are jurisdictions who can be the leaders to inform other cities how to do something. There's been plenty of research, it works. So educating jurisdictions and cities, other cities educating other cities, for example. And then next year, some kind of a measurement tool that shows the progress that's been made.
Great.
And
Thank you.
That's probably good. That's probably good.
All right. Thank you so much. That's a lot of content for such a short period of time. So I really appreciate everyone, making the effort both last week and today. As we heard a lot, I think a lot of people are interested in getting more involved and having more volunteer efforts. I think this was really a good first step in that process to bring this group together to get stakeholders involved, and we'll clearly be doing more of this in the future. I just want to address some next steps. We have all of the ideas from today. We'll send a follow-up email with the recording so you can hear some of the other ideas that we didn't get to have time for on the summaries. And again, thank you to all the facilitators and the note takers and reporters out on that. That was really helpful to have all of that. We'll be developing a list of recommendations from all of your ideas today, and we'll be working with that kind of initial planning group to get that together, and we can send that back out to the group. We're planning to bring to this new environmental board that the city is forming for their input, and then city council following that, and to start to get some of these ideas into action. There's a lot of work to be done for sure. I really appreciate all the voices from the businesses in Issaquah, the residents, everyone. It sounds like people are really ready to get down to business. So I really appreciate that. The meeting is about to officially end. I am going to play a video and song at the end. So if you'd like to stick around for a couple minutes and listen to that, we have a local artist, John Chmaj. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he's a local musician who's recommended by Ann Fletcher and the People for Climate Action, who puts together musical pieces with beautiful pictures. And we thought this would be a really good way to conclude the session today, so we all have some time to reflect on it. So again, I would thank everyone again, and the meeting will be officially ending now, and I will go ahead and play that. And I will look forward to connecting with people in email as well. I'll go ahead and share my screen for that. Thank you.
you.